My name is Bailey Lewis. I'm the Director of Content Strategy at TrueMatter. And I want to tell you something about me before we get started because I think it'll be important. I don't know anybody who loves words more than I do. Every part of my education has had something to do with words and language and writing. I've written a novel. One of my favorite possessions is my library card. And if you get to know me and we haven't seen each other in a while, I'm going to ask you what you've been reading. So be prepared for those of you I've met today. So I love words, and that's going to be important because there's me on Twitter. Even my Twitter handle, Bailey Sends Word. It's going to be important because today I know we're in a room full of people who care about technology. We care about creating good experiences for users online. We care about making fantastic digital products, whatever discipline we're in. But even the best of us too often don't pay attention to a very important topic, and that is web content. The way we approach our words online is often abysmally bad for the users who are trying to use it. And that's because a lot of us treat web content like something that's to be read on a website or application or even a software suite. But online, web content is something you do. It's something your users are trying to actively engage with to get something done or to find a particular piece of information. And some of you may have heard content strategists like me say this before. And so I want to give you a caveat. There are things that people do read online. So I concede that point. Usually we're talking about the world of e-publishing. So e-books, articles, blog posts. Maybe very long Facebook posts, but usually not. Even your best friend's Facebook post, you're like, okay, got the gist. Too long, didn't read. So you might have heard content strategists like me say this before, depending on what field you're in. And you might know that, but maybe you don't always have the opportunity or the skill set on your team to implement that. Or maybe you've heard content strategists like me say this before and you're still pretty skeptical. So that's fine. For those of you making this face, people don't read online. I accept the challenge and want to show you a little example. So this is the home page for a utility company. And I just want y'all to take a few minutes, just look at the screen, see what's available, look at the words on it. You probably pay an energy bill or a water bill of some kind. So just take a few seconds to take it all in and then we'll move on. Everybody pretty much got the gist? Okay. Raise your hand if you saw any of these words in red. And be honest, because it doesn't work if you're not. Yeah, so a few of us did, and most of us didn't, because most of us are we're all probably familiar with utility sites. We're looking for the words that matter to us on a utility site. We're not looking for the word chicken. We're not looking for the words renew my self-esteem. We're looking for words that relate to utilities. And even those of us who did see a few of the words probably didn't catch all of them because we're simply not reading word for word on a web page like we would be an article or an essay. And that's because we are human beings with limited human brains. And some of y'all are going to be familiar with the concepts that I'm about to discuss. I'm going to apply them directly to web content. So one limitation of our human brains is something called cognitive load. And for our purposes today, we're talking about the fact that we can hold about 7 things in our brain at any given time. And some of us are very lucky and we can hold 9. And some of us are less lucky and we can only hold 5. And that's why you go to the grocery store and you end up buying a bunch of cheese instead of the thing that you actually wanted, which has never happened to me. And it's a problem for us in particular online when we're looking at pieces of information. So if we go back to our utility company website homepage, there are more than 7 pieces of information on this screen. In fact, there are more than 14, but the cognitive load of me numbering all of these, I kind of ran out as well. But you get to this page, the first thing you might look at would be manage my account. That's what you're probably here to do, just take my money, I don't like to be here. That's the number one thing. The second thing you might look at is this large graphic, sign up for services right below, so maybe you'll notice that. Natural gas rates is right next to that. But each one of these pieces of information, you're really only paying attention to the very basic part of it. So that's why a lot of us didn't read on to say, now with chicken. So really, when we're talking about keeping certain things in our brain, they're very, very basic pieces of information. They can't be detailed at all. Another constraint of our human brains is our peripheral vision. We're terrible at peripheral vision. We can only see about 10% of what's in front of us with any clarity. Once you start to get into about 30% on either side, I can see that these folks over here are not human lizards. But that's about all I can tell you about them. I can't tell you any kind of detail about them. And once I get out here, my hand, I know it's not a human lizard, but my brain is saying, there's motion, you might want to pay attention, and that's about all it can do until I turn to look at it, and then I can finally see it. That affects us online too, because a site like our utility company homepage, if we're looking at manage my account, everything else kind of blurs out. We're only looking at that one thing, and that's all we can see. So if that's all we wanted, we're not going to even scan the rest of the page, let alone read it. Some of us are familiar with all these principles. We apply them to design, or we apply them to layout, or we apply them to interaction in some way. But since we are doing that, a lot of us to some degree, why are we still writing our websites and our applications and our software so they look like this? Now, this is the Comet bus transportation website for the city of Columbia, South Carolina. And we do have a robust bus system. And this is the fare information page for that website, which arguably would be one of the most important pages on the site, because here I'm going to ostensibly figure out how to pay for a ticket, where to buy a ticket, any discounts that might be available to me, any passes or group discounts, anything I can get if I have disabilities or have special requests. But it's a wall of text that stretches from here to the moon. It's not even done yet. There it goes. All right, so this is a really hard web page to use if all I want is a simple piece of information. And let's do a little test with it. Where do I buy bus fare? Honestly, I've never ridden the bus in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm not going to blame this web page in particular, but it could be part of the reason. But let's say that I wanted to try it. Where on this page do I find bus fare? Well, I don't see anything that says prices. I don't even really see anything that says fare except at the very top of the page. I don't see anything that looks like a place where I can buy bus tickets. So I'm going to have to start reading. So the first paragraph says, all tickets for the Comet are available at the transit center at the corner of Sumter and Laurel Street. That's fantastic. I read the first line and immediately got rewarded for it. And that's all right there. It was a little more work than I wanted to do, but at least I got my answer. I'll go to the corner of Sumter and Laurel. But since I think I've already got my answer and there's nothing on the page to communicate to me that there might be more information, and I would have to keep reading, which I'm not going to do, to find that out, I would probably miss, in this pink text on a black background, that I can use the transit system's online or mobile app to buy tickets. You know what? I'd much rather use a mobile app than go to the corner of Laurel and Sumter. The corner of Laurel and Sumter is a bus station, and it's packed. There's a ton of people, and there's nowhere to park because it's a bus station. So I would much rather use this app, but I would never even know that information was here because this page is such a dense wall of text. When we present our users with this type of information that's so hard to get through and so dense and takes so much effort, it makes them tired, it makes them overwhelmed, and it makes them impatient. And when they feel like that, they do one of three things. They leave. They decide they don't need to ride the dang bus. They can take an Uber. That's fine. They call. They overload our call center with answers that they could and should be able to find online. Or they fail. They think that they've done something correctly. I go to the corner of Laurel and Sumter, which would be a failure for me if I can just do it on my phone. Or they complete a form and they think they've done it right, and then you have to get back to them and say that they didn't. And usually failure leads to them either leaving or calling, which are all things we don't want them to do. These things are terrible for your user experience, and they hurt your business's bottom line. They hurt your online engagement, and they hurt the way that your customers or prospective customers feel about your brand or your company. If that's the only experience you have with a brand or company, something like the Comet website, you're going to have a pretty bad impression of how they treat their customers. So it's time to stop doing this. It's time to rethink online content. It's time to rethink the way that we approach words online. And it makes sense that we try to write for the web the same way that we do for any traditional media, because all of us were taught to write long form, starting with most of us the 5-paragraph essay, or some of us might know this as the hamburger essay. And so just a quick recap, if you all have forgotten, because it might have been since 5th grade since you heard about the 5-paragraph essay. The first paragraph, or the top bun, is your introduction. You're going to tell people what you're about to tell them. And you're going to do it in about 5 to 8 sentences, because we were told 5 to 8 sentences is a paragraph. No more, no less. That's how much you get. And then our next paragraph, the bacon or lettuce layer, up to you which one you want that to be, is another 5 to 8 sentences, introducing our evidence, introducing points that we want to make. And then the third paragraph is another 5 to 8 sentences, building on those points, building on that evidence. And our fourth paragraph, this is the meat or meat substitute layer of our hamburger, another 5 to 8 sentences, wrapping up your points, wrapping up your evidence, throwing in any last-minute quotes, that you want to make sure people understand. And the bottom bun, the 5th paragraph, we're going to tie it all up in a bow, tell everyone what we told them in another 5 to 8 sentences. So by the time you are done writing a 5-paragraph essay, you've written anywhere between 20 and 40 plus sentences. And most of us didn't stop there. Most of us went on to write 20-page papers in college. Maybe we've written 75-page white papers. Some of us might have even written 200-plus page books. We never wrote any smaller than this 5-paragraph essay. Unfortunately, that's how we all learned how to write, but it couldn't be further from the way we need to write for the web. Online, we should be thinking about our words in terms of microcopy. How short can it be and still convey the information? How concise can it be? How straightforward can it be? Online copy should be scannable. People are not reading, and so they need to be able to scan and skim for the information. It should be concise. It should be unwaveringly straightforward. In fact, we should be thinking about our online content the same way we think about our highway signs, because we have just as much time to grab somebody's attention as they whip by at 85 plus miles an hour, and get them to act on it and be successful. If you didn't catch this information on this highway sign, you would get on the New Jersey Turnpike before you had a chance to do anything about it. Imagine how horrible our highway signs would be if they were all written the way we write our web content in paragraphs. No one will get anywhere. It's a good thing we have GPS. Some of this is directly from the New Jersey Turnpike website, by the way. So, case in point. This is a rampant problem for websites, applications, and software. And so it doesn't apply to just any industry or just any type of business. And even those of us who should know better or who do really great work in other areas are guilty of this. And so we should identify some problem areas that we can look for in our own sites, apps, and software. The first is going to be paragraphs. I've harped on them so far, I will harp on them again. Paragraphs online are really difficult for our users to digest. Higher education websites are some of the most guilty of the web paragraph. And it makes sense because the academics are the ones who taught us to write in the 5-paragraph essay. This is the Arts on Campus webpage for the University of Utah website. And because I have read this paragraph, it's almost a 5-paragraph essay. Since I've read it, I can tell you that everything you need to do relating to the arts on University of Utah's campus, you can do here. You can buy a ticket for a play. You can learn how to get involved in a visual studio. But you are going to have to read this entire thing to find out if your information is there and to get the information that you need. It's going to take you a while. Here's another example, the Lennox website. This is their product selector page. And at first, they're doing a really great job. They're giving me 3 options. They are clearly labeled, very straightforward, cooling, heating systems. I am not sure what the difference between a system and a cooling and heating system is, but they're trying really hard. They even have a heading. The sentence at the top I can tell you isn't very helpful, but at least it's short. But what is all this at the bottom of this page? Who is reading this? I have to tell you, I'm a content strategist. It is my job, literally, to read all the long, dense, horrible web content that no one else in the world wants to read. And I still haven't read this. As many times as I've looked at this screen, I just can't bring myself to do it. I don't want to. So I hope that there's no important information in here, because if I'm not reading it, I can't imagine who in the world is. My guess is that the only entity reading this information is not a human at all. It's probably our SEO robot overlords. In other words, this content was not written for our users to interact with. Another problem area is unnecessary, redundant information. Maybe we repeat the same information on multiple pages across a site or multiple screens across an app. Maybe we have information about the CEO's autobiography on our website. But this is one of my favorite examples, because this is the Panasonic global website. This is the About Us section, mercifully, and this is the history subsection of that main navigation item. This is an entire huge section, 50 plus links devoted to the founder of Panasonic. So every blue link on this page takes you to a lengthy subpage about the founder himself, which is great if you're doing your graduate thesis on the guy. But otherwise, it's not very helpful for anyone who might be on the Panasonic website. A lot of the screens we've looked at are maybe not the best designed. I don't know how many of you in here are designers or information architects. They're not the best laid out. Maybe their functionality is questionable. So you might be thinking, well, we can just fix this problem by making it look better. The reason they're terrible is they're kind of ugly. But that's not the case. This is a content problem, not strictly a design problem, even though the other screens may have some of those design problems. For example, this is the Walmart global website. We're once again in the About section. This is the Our History page. This page is pretty well laid out. It has nice big images. It's on brand for Walmart. But what is this paragraph at the top? Under Our History, first of all, it's extremely tiny. And the only reason it's 3 lines is because it's that small. Otherwise, you'd be getting into 6, 7 line territory. And I happen to know that there is important information in this, basically, web paragraph, but it's very unlikely anybody's actually reading it. And there may be reasons that you want to know about the history of Walmart. It might not be so bad if this were the only place that this happened on this entire page, but this page is very, very long. In fact, it's so long I tried to make it scroll for you like some of the other pages, and it broke my keynote presentation. So I had to stop trying to do that. It's this long. That's what I had to do instead. Throughout this incredibly long page, basically most of the content you get is written in that kind of small, super long paragraph style. It would be enough to make me give up on the history of Walmart altogether, for sure. The other thing we like to do is to get clever. A lot of us might identify as creatives, or at least we're very smart people, and we like to show off how smart and clever we are. But online, we have to be, as I said before, unwaveringly straightforward, because we just don't have much time to grab people's attention and explain to them how clever we're being. This is one of my favorite examples of being too clever. This is the Microcopy think tank company website. They are a think tank discussing issues revolving around China's macroeconomic arrival in the modern world. These are very, very smart people. But they have a problem from minute 1, because as soon as I type their name, Microcopy, into Google, Google immediately corrects me and says, "Do you mean Marco Polo?" And I say, "No, I didn't." So just from the very beginning, they're having usability and engagement problems just getting people to their site. Once you do finally get here, the cleverness problems are rampant, so I'm only going to focus on one, which is their first navigation item, to Fen. This is extremely clever, and if any of you get it right away, congratulations. They had to explain it to me, and then I realized how brilliant it was. But Fen is a form of Chinese currency. 2 cents is an English phrase about ideas or thoughts. So they combine the two phrases together for 2 fen, and that is their blog. That's where they put all of their important research and ideas about China's macroeconomic arrival. That's where they want people to go when they hit this site. But nobody that I have ever met understands just intuitively that 2 fen means blog. It's not a thing that exists outside the brilliant think tank's imagination. So probably most of their visitors are not hitting that page at all, which is unfortunate because that's what they want them to do. When we write these paragraphs and these sentences, and we're trying to get our users to take action with them, we have a tendency to bury those actions because they're in the middle of all that text. And so my example for this, we're right back to our favorite website, the Comet website. Right now we're on the contact page. If I am on this contact page, I probably want to call someone. My bus is late. I don't know if it's coming. Do I need to do something else? All I want is a phone number. But it's very hard to find a phone number just by first glance at this page, particularly if you're on a mobile device. If you're on a mobile device, all you see is the first paragraph. So I'm going to try to read the first paragraph. This has worked once before. At the Comet, we appreciate your business and value your feedback. I don't feel appreciated or valued, though, because all I want is a phone number. I just want to contact you. So as I keep reading, the phone number is actually down here in the second content block, or basically a web paragraph. At the very end of this sentence, I finally get the phone number I need. This is frustrating enough on desktop, but it's very frustrating on a phone, especially if my bus is late and I'm trying to get somewhere. Basically, what your users want is to get something done. They have a need, they have a goal, they have something that they want to do. And yes, they want it to embody the tone of the site, or they want it to be enjoyable, but really they just want it to be easy. And so maybe what they want is a hot dog. Maybe they're at a 4th of July celebration, or they're at a fair, and they're feeling very Americana, not sure. And all they want is just a straightforward, no fuss hot dog. That's it. They're going to eat it, they're going to be full, they're going to move on with their day. And what we give them online looks more like this. And I'm sure the hot dog's in there somewhere, but you're going to have to get through a lot of words in order to find it. And our users are like this poor fly, just trying not to have to deal with all the words, but eventually they're going to have to if they want to get to the thing they actually came here for. All right, we've already talked about how this is a rampant problem. It's not just one business, it's not just one industry. How do we fix it in our own sites and apps? How do we start to take a look at our own products and start to make a change? Ideally, content, the words that you're writing for your websites, applications, software, will be part of the design and planning process from day one. Ideally, you would never put together a wireframe or a mock-up or a prototype that had lorem ipsum in it. Lorem ipsum is like a dirty word to me. Don't say it. I'll be very offended. And so when you do that, you're able to create products that follow the rules of microcopy, that are very straightforward, that prioritize actions and give people an idea of what's on the screen. For example, this is a physician practice homepage that True Matter created for our regional healthcare system. We know when you go to your doctor's office homepage, you're there 90% of the time to do 2 things. You want to make an appointment, or you want to pay your bill. And neither of these things are very much fun. At least I don't think so. So we're going to let you do that immediately. There are other things you can do on this site, but this is making up the bulk of our user tasks, and we know it. We're going to give them no extra words. They don't want any extra words. They know how to do this. They know what they want. And when we do have to have explanatory text, we're going to make it as short as humanly possible. This is what just that billing section looked like before. So all of this information is actually in half of that iPhone screen that you saw before, but they were writing their online content as if they were writing for traditional media, as if they were writing paragraphs or an essay or an article. And it's very difficult to get the same information from this page because it's so full of words. But not all of us have the luxury of starting from scratch. Not all of us have the luxury of blowing up an entire site or application or software suite and incorporating content. That's a real thing. Maybe we've inherited something that's broken content-wise. Maybe you're sitting here today listening to me thinking, I need to go change this, but there's no way we have the budget to start all the way over. My designers will kill me. And that's completely legitimate. So there are some things you can do only by touching words and doing very little with design or layout or functionality that will help your users and help your overall content. The first is to cut 90% of the content on your website, your application, or your software. And I'm not joking. That's how wordy, dense, and overbloated most applications, software, digital products are currently. And a lot of you in this room are suffering from the same problem. So you're going to start cutting whole sections. You're going to start cutting whole pages. Maybe you, like I said before, maybe you don't need the CEO's autobiography on your website. Or, if you work in the academic space, maybe you don't need the welcome from the dean on the home page, or maybe even anywhere. You're going to start cutting redundant information. If you have navigational problems that have led you to put the exact same content on 2 different pages, you're going to start to cull that down. And then you're going to start to cull down word by word even. Can you say in 15 words what you are currently saying in 50? My guess is that the answer is yes, and you might even be able to say it in 5. So you'll be cutting 90% of your content when you think you've cut enough. This is painful. Cutting content is painful. You'll need to go back and cut again. There's almost always more that you can cut. Basically, you're looking to have just what you need and no more to help your users out. Once you've cut that content, once you've gotten it down to just what it needs to be and no more fluff and nothing extra, you can create strong, meaningful headings for the content that remains. So you'll want to create headings that say exactly what's going to be underneath them. You'll create subheadings for those headings that, address subtopics. And really, none of your headings or subheadings should have more than about 2 or 3 lines underneath. 3 would be pushing it for me, because people will stop scanning it. There's no way that they're getting to the end of those sentences anyway. Why write them? If your user or if anyone can understand what's happening on any given screen just by reading the headings that are on there, then you're doing exactly right. If they have to do any extra reading or effort beyond the headings to just understand what's there and take an action, you either have more words to cut or you need to write more straightforward headings. As you're writing those headings, you'll prioritize your users' actions. A lot of us in this room might have clients who are going to want to put their internally focused content at the top of a page. That's certainly never come up in my practice before. You'll want to prioritize what you know that your users are there to do and let them do that first. Because if they can do that, they may engage with other content on your site or your app. But if they can't do that, they will leave and try to go about it a different way. So at True Matter, we have the luxury of starting from the very beginning with content as part of our process. And we understand that. So we decided to give ourselves a little challenge. Can we do what we're saying to do? Can we practice what we preach? Can we take a site and make it better content-wise only by changing the words and not the design or the layout or the interactions? So we took my favorite website on the entire internet, the Fair Info page. I'm just going to remind you real quick how bad this page was. Huge wall of content, lots and lots of information. They're trying with the headings, but there's still just lots of paragraphs to read. It goes on forever. It's a lot. It makes me want to do this. I can't handle it. And so we gave ourselves that challenge. Can we just touch words? We're not touching anything else. If we only change the words, can we make it better? And the answer was absolutely. So we did cut 90% of the content or more. We gave it meaningful headings that actually say things like paying your fare and where to buy. And every heading or subheading only has a line or 2 of explanatory text under it. You'll see we still have the pink links on the black background. My designer didn't like that at all, but we're not changing design. We're just trying to make it a better experience by only touching the words. Trying to get people to the information that they want, let them know what's on this screen, and let them interact with it. Mm-hmm.
So if you were going to make a video to go along with that, to kind of support it, what kind of things would you do? Because there's a lot of words on there, so where do the video would actually
Yeah, so the question was if you're going to create a video for this page, and I'll just go back to it. We'll have to watch it again. Apologies for that keynote thing. If you're going to create a video for this page, what kind of information would you put on it because it's a lot of words? Really, my goal is to make it so you don't mind looking at the words. You don't even realize that you are looking at the words, because what we hear in our user tests a lot is people flat out say, I'm not watching that video. I have no interest in it. I don't want to watch it. We actually just ran a user test last week for a bank, and they have a video on their homepage, and their users were like, I don't want to watch this video. So instead, we try to make the content available in a way that you don't even feel like you're doing work to look at it. Yeah. That's a good question. All right, we do have to watch this again. Apologies. Yeah.
So you mentioned cutting 90% of content, and obviously I see the benefits in that, but what about like SEO, especially, not optimizing the site, because what else can it pull from the sites?
Yeah.
And I mean, alt tag on everything, so.
Yeah, that's a great question. The question is, if I cut 90% of my content, what about SEO? What does the search engine have to go off of? So it's a great question, and we actually TrueMatter just had an event about this a while back. We basically had a debate between myself and another UX professional and then a couple SEO professionals. It was really interesting, because I'm sitting here saying cut 90% of your content, and the SEO professionals are saying, no, you need at least 800 words on the page. And I can just imagine users crying and robots rejoicing. But basically what we came to is that Google's algorithm is changing rapidly, even in the last 6 months. And this comes from the SEO folks. I'm not an expert by any means. But what they said is it's changing rapidly. Even in the last 6 months, Google doesn't use keywords anymore. It's becoming very smart. It's using a lot of AI. It can recognize synonyms. It can recognize if you say, I want a recipe for chicken, and it can give you lots of different variations of what that means. So you don't need to do the keyword bloating anymore that would add so much content to a page. You don't need to some people were creating an additional page for every synonym where they used a different word. You don't need to do those types of things anymore. Those are old SEO tactics. And really, Google has been asking for permission to see your CSS because it's interested in the way you've laid out the page. It's interested to see if the information that people are looking for is near the top of the page. It's interested, of course, in mobile optimization. So when we were discussing compromises with those two SEO experts, my basic thing was put your 800 words at the bottom of the page if you want to, but put it at the bottom of the page. Get it out of your user's way. And this is it's particularly an issue in the e-commerce world, where you're trying to drive people to buy products and you're trying to drive them to a site among a bunch of other people who are selling the same thing. So there is a compromise to be had. If you need to have that content, if Google's looking for it, put it where Google can see it and no one else has to really deal with it. Yeah. The question is, is it possible to put it in the metadata instead of on the page? The description that you write, for example, the meta description doesn't get used by Google to rank your site. It's just marketing copy basically for your users to decide if they want to come to the website. And then another question, what about the alt text? Alt text is used also by people who have disabilities and cannot see the screen. So you want to be very careful about what kind of information you're putting in alt text for your images. And I don't know how Google feels about super long alt text. I've written a lot recently for images that just have to be described to people who can't see them. So that'd be an interesting question to look into. But, and of course you can't make it white on a white background. We all tried to do that back in the late 90s, early 2000s. That's now black hat SEO. So, yeah. But yeah, great question. While you're thinking about your content, thinking about retooling it, thinking about improving it, another thing you should do is test it on small screens. I've mentioned this just a couple times, but nothing makes it more apparent how many words you have than a mobile device. And so I have an example here. This is Train's HVAC pricing information screen. It's got some design problems for sure. They need to work on responsive. But also, they're trying for the headings. They're trying to, give you straightforward headings, but there's just so much information under each one. And it's hard to know if your information is even going to be on this page. And then you have to do a lot of work once you find it. Instead, at True Matter, this is a physician recruiting website we made for that same healthcare network. We try to make sure that everything, especially these are doctors, they're not spending any time on this page. Everything is just really easy to look at. There's no extra words. Everything has a heading. Everything is as concise and straightforward as it can possibly be. And this page was about, what it's like to live in Colombia. So it'd be easy for us to write a book, but we decidedly didn't, and we did it on purpose. Basically, when you're thinking about how to approach content online, we can sum it up in 3 simple lines to encompass the strategy. You need the right words in the right place, doing the right job. And if you all have any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them.